Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome back to the podcast Nat Fitzgerald from Spaceships. Spaceships will release Ruins on March 24th via Friend Club Records. Nat talks about the perspective shift that came with releasing music during the pandemic, the near-death experience that inspired his solo record, how political and social changes influenced his writing on Ruins, and a lot more. It was really great getting to reconnect with Nat, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's conversation.
Yeah, somehow, the baby's gone and I'm still waking up at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'm like, even though I was up till 1 or 1:30 last night, and I'm like, why am I waking up at 7?
It's just a thing you got to do. So you were last on September 2020. So we were right in the midst of lockdowns and COVID and going nowhere.
Yeah.
What was that experience like of putting music out in the pandemic and just having it sit there?
It was really weird because we had like all these big plans for like 2019 and 2020, and we recorded Tiny Fires and Pillars, the album that came out in 2020, and Tiny Fires is our EP that came out in 2019. We recorded those across the same 2 weekends, and then we were working on what became Retrouvé, the split that we released this past November. And the plan was to release them all like in a burst.
Yeah.
Just like really fast. And so we released Tiny Fires in October 2019. And the plan was to sort of like tour on that and like play shows on that and push that really hard so we could save up money for this full length that we weren't going to tell anybody we were working on. And then we would just drop this surprise release. But, and then, in between there, we would have had the split that we put out with, we had a few other bands that had come and gone before we found Analecta. We should have asked them in this place. We've been great friends with them for the whole lifetime of the band. But we, so the plan for Pillars was just to be like this kind of like capitalization of all this momentum that we've moved on. And like, we have the EP, we have the split, and now surprise, there's a full length that we're really proud of and we think is our best work. But everything stopped a few months before that. And so, that affected everything. So it affected, our friend who was mixing it. He couldn't mix it quite as well because he had to take other jobs that were paying a little bit more than we were probably. Not that we were paying him a bad rate, but he was already in the midst of an interstate move. And then, now the pandemic hits and everybody's life is thrown into chaos. And, we were going to have a tour. We were working on scheduling a tour right before everything shut down. And you can't really do that anymore. Yeah. Like even when people were doing shows again, still touring wasn't really happening, because one thing happens, one date has a cancellation or one promoter gets sick. And then it's just, you're kind of stranded with whatever. And so, what ended up happening was that Pillars was released almost entirely into an online space that was entirely, maybe not entirely removed from the local scene that we've spent our whole time playing in, because we don't do a whole lot outside of South Bend. We're all busy guys, and we've got jobs and families and things like that, and so it's hard for us to play out in we've done a few day shots here and there and played a couple festivals, but other than that, it's mostly just a pretty local crowd that we've been playing to. But so then when we released Pillars, we were brought onto Friend Club Records, and he's based out of Buffalo. I actually have never met Rob in real life. We've been in a group chat for 5 years together. But and then the roster there is, there's bands from Germany and Norway and Russia and Ukraine and LA and, everywhere, just all over the globe. And so we released this album to what suddenly became a much wider niche audience. Yeah. Because, we have our niche audience here, but finding those people outside of there, it was really interesting. But then it also allowed the time to do things that I might not have done with an album release. So with all the times that we spent not playing shows, I edited together a visual companion to the album that's up on YouTube, and we have a VHS for sale that has, I think we only have 2 copies left though. Nice. Yeah, but then kind of this whole visual project to go along with it, not necessarily like a music video, like a extended music collage, probably. And then just focusing on other ways to promote this. And so, we did live streams, and we started pushing on our YouTube channel, which was always kind of there, but just kind of whatever. And then, doing playthrough videos instead of shows, and making memes on TikTok instead of whatever else. That was a weird entire set.
Yeah. It's like this push for creativity. It's like, okay, I can't go play this and show this to people live. So how do I create that momentum of touring, but in an online space that's unique and captures specific attentions?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it's weird because that sort of stuff it had already been happening pre-pandemic. You've already needed to do some sort of finesse with your online presence in order to catch attention. There's a band, Embracer, out of West Virginia that played in my living room to 8 people in 2019, 2018. Everybody bought something though, so they were totally fine with it. Yeah. We were talking about it afterwards, and they actually had a date. I thought that it was a tour that they were on. It ended up being a one shot because there was another weekend show that got canceled, and so they just drove out from West Virginia and then drove home.
Oh shit!
And so I apologized to them that fewer people, not as many people came out. He was no, everybody. Everybody was really supportive. Everybody bought something, and at this point, if you're a touring band, you're more like a t-shirt company than you are making music. And so, that's already had been happening, but just trying to adapt that further to, okay, what can you do that if you can't do the show part, if you just have the different merchandise that you have, and if you just have the different web presence that you can build on there, how can you best leverage is a very carnal word for it. It's almost vulgar to leverage those things to getting your attention as a band. Yeah, but it's what happens. So
yeah, did that shift as you put out the split EP and you have this new full length coming out? Did that shift in how you approach these records and releasing them? I mean, the split kind of dropped just out of thin air. I mean, I'm not on social media, so maybe there was a big campaign and I missed it because I just get Bandcamp notifications. I'm like, oh shit, cool.
Yeah, it was kind of out of thin air. So we had worked on our side of it for a while. These songs had existed for a bit. The first demo for Gaze, which is the first track on there, I found it on my I found it on my Tumblr recently. Oh, wow. And it's 2011 or something like that is the very first demo. And it was really the first song that I wrote that I actually had like a pretty sizable pedal board for, instead of taking the songs that I had written on acoustic and adapting them to this ever-growing pedal board that I just kept adding stuff to. And so that song had existed for a while. The final song, Carry On, had been maybe 8 years old or something like that. And these are songs that were kind of floating around in the aether on, being taken off of other track listings, because it's like this song exists but it doesn't fit. And then the song Enough was new, but it just was, the idea for the last 4 years at this point, or 5 years. God, it was 2018, 5 years ago. It's crazy. But the idea was that they would be on a split with another band. And so our side of it had been, the writing at least had been finished for a while. And then the recording, we had kind of touched up and finessed a little bit and kind of improved the recordings that existed until it was finally time that Analecta was done with their side of it. And so it was very strange for us because we hadn't worked on it in a year or so, a year or two, when it finally came out. So it kind of did drop though, because it was just like, here's the thing that has been around for a while. It's just been waiting for a companion. Here's finally the companion. Let's push it out. So
that's cool. I really like the EP, like especially Gaze. Like the guitars sound phenomenal. The drums, there's interesting mix on the drums. That I don't hate. It's just I don't know.
That was So that was the first thing that I have mixed myself in 10 years, really.
Oh wow!
Outside of for Spaceships, and really the first full band thing that I've done that wasn't, because the first Spaceships record was just me multi-tracking for 3 years. But that was actually a what's the name of the module? A Yamaha EA10. Module. It just like clips onto the kick drum and then records everything. It just like outputs a stereo mix.
Oh wow!
And it's pretty decent. And actually, all of the drums on the full length are recorded through the same thing. But because it was much later, I had a bit more time to figure out how to get it sounding a little more natural.
Yeah. What led you to the name Retrouvé?
Retrouvé is a French word that means found, and as we were discussing titles, it was me and Sarah Maloney from Analecta. We were just tossing around a bunch of different ideas, and we came on the idea of like finding something, or found like a found family or something like that, and that led us to the word Retrouvé, which is kind of tongue in cheek on our side, because we finally found someone to like put out the split with. But then Sarah also has gone through a pretty significant period of self-discovery over the last few years. And a lot of the songs there are only 2 songs on the Analecta side, but that's mostly the theme there is through that journey. And so also it's the... all their songs are in other languages, so I can't remember the title offhand, but it's the only Analecta song that actually has lyrics. So it's tied into that theme of finding yourself, and under the piles of things other people say that you are, under the piles of things that the world tries to throw at you to keep you from being your authentic self.
That's cool. Let's talk about the solo record, Nativity, that you put out during the pandemic too. I've listened to this cassette a lot because I love it. It's just cool to like put on and like sit on my couch and pet my dog and chill out too.
It's so weird that people are listening to that.
Well, I opened the cassette today and I read the story that's inside for the first time this morning, and I was like, holy fuck, this is dark.
I actually went, so when Ben and I were on the podcast last time, we hung up and I was like, why didn't we tell the story then? because Ben was the roommate.
Oh, wow.
At the time, our guitarist Ben in Spaceships was living with my wife and I, and it was Christmas night. He was out of town, and my wife and I were watching Return of the King with our other roommate. And there was a knock on the door, which was very strange the doorbell rang, which is very strange that I actually heard the doorbell from the basement because I usually can't. Mm-hmm. And I went up, and there was a guy who asked for Ben, and I said he's not there. And so he just like turned around and like left and like walked down the street, like didn't have like a car or something. It was like, that's really weird. Okay, so whatever. We just went back downstairs, started watching the movie again, and heard the doorbell again. And like, how am I hearing this doorbell all the time? But so I go back up, and he has somebody with him, and he's like, Ben told me he'd hit me up today. And I was like, I don't think that's true, man. It's Christmas. He's out of town, whatever. It's like, well, could you just call him? He said he was going to hit me up. And so I'm trying to like figure out how to diplomatically get these guys off my porch. And I looked down at, because I had tried to call Ben a couple times that day. And I'm telling them, like, listen, like he doesn't have signal where he is. It's not something, I can't get a hold of him. Like, well, you didn't even try to call him. And so I just like kind of defeatedly look at my phone, and I looked back up to tell him like, listen, no, man. But like, they were already rushing in to the house, and I'm, trying to struggle. And I hear one of the guys say that I was going to get shot. So I like froze up and then got put in, he got me in a sleeper hold, which was incorrectly applied. He was instead just strangling me. You're supposed to like get the windpipe, and he was getting my jugular. So instead of knocking me unconscious, he was getting close to killing me. But then his brother, ran in and grabbed a bunch of cash that Ben had in his dresser drawer that he was very loose-lipped about at the time. He was always going on about how bank accounts are for suckers, and I had $8,000 in a bag in my dresser drawer, and so this guy knew him from work and found out about it. But I'm in my living room being choked out, and just thinking like, and I didn't really feel anything. It was just kind of like, I guess this is it. This is it, I guess. And so he found what he was looking for, and the other guy let me go, and then they ran off through the freshly fallen snow, by the way. So like the cops just like followed the tracks and caught him. He was trying to climb a fence when the cops hit him with a taser, and he like buckled over the fence, and then a dog attacked him. Oh. And I'm like, okay, all right, I feel better now, but I feel a little better, but then I had already been sort of working on a lot of those riffs and atmospheres at that point. I had Spaceships pretty early on in infancy. We had been playing maybe a year or two at that point, and everybody else in the band was just super busy. Our drummer was working like 60, 70 hours a week. Ben was working 2 jobs trying to save up money to get married. And, we just didn't have a lot of time to practice or write together. And so I was like, I guess I'm writing a solo record. And then this happened in the midst of that. And so it just sort of informed, like, then as I'm kind of mumbling melodies over the songs, and then the words are taking shape over it. That's just what it's about. And so, yeah. And then it was probably 7 years that those songs just kind of existed. I had started recording it previously, but then my laptop got stolen. So I just kind of let it sit for a while till Rob from Friend Club Records kind of kicked me in the ass. It was like, hey, finish these. I'm like, okay. He gave me a deadline, and I pushed it out. So
and now we have this wonderful little tape to listen to.
Yeah, there you go.
Or I do. I imagine it's sold out by now.
You and 20 other people. I think I just sold the last one that I had at a show.
Oh, cool.
So you and like 23 other people.
Nice. Lucky me. It gets played constantly. It's a good little.
I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes things just stick with you, and then you realize they're horrifying. Sure. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
That's awesome. There seemed to me, in my limited scope, some momentum after Pillars came out for Spaceship, some like rumblings and talk. Was there any talk about like taking that and like, I mean, you're putting this new record out on Friend Club, but was there ever like, we should go for something bigger, we should try something else, or was it just like, we got a good thing going here?
We don't have the sort of lifestyles that would give room to those sorts of ambitions. And so that's one of the things that's really great about working with Friend Club is that they basically will meet whatever your goals are in a way at this level, at least, so we're not trying to sell 1,000 records and get a tour funded or something like that. We're not trying to like hire Rick Ross to produce a record or something like that. And so but for a band that we play a time a month, and we want to play in other cities, maybe do a couple festivals, and just write music that gets heard, it's a really good partner for just we want to, because this will actually be our third full length that we put to vinyl, and we've only ever pressed 100 copies of anything. We just sold the last copy of Son of Man last week, and that came out in 2016. So we don't rush things a whole lot, and so it'd be great if it sells out faster than that. Yeah. Pillars is going a bit quicker than Son of Man did, but yeah, we're pretty comfortable where we are. Actually, especially with, I have a 6-month-old now. Our guitarist, Ben, had just had a baby in 2019, and then now he has 2 kids. And our bassist also has a 7-year-old. And so it's just like, we can't really do too much more than what we're doing, and we don't really want to. It's just fun, comfortable place to it's the creating and the sharing is the goal for us, and Friend Club is a really great partner to facilitate that to the level that we are looking for.
Let's talk about this new record, Ruins. Where did the title come from?
It was a pretty late addition to it. We were just tossing around, we had just been calling it LP4 for a long time, and then thought about maybe we just do a self-titled. But a lot of the songs from it came out of, obviously, the pandemic. I tried really hard not to write a record during lockdown, and I tried really hard not to do that because I already am kind of hyperactive in my writing, in that I will write a part and then hear a bass part that goes to it, or sometimes I even start with the bass part and like I'm not even the bassist, like I don't know what I'm doing over there, but and I wanted to get away from just handing all the guys a demo and being like, here are the parts. And so I tried really hard to not do that. And so, I finished the Nativity record, and I finished Bears His Teeth is a remote project that I'm a part of. You've talked with Matt and Adam before on the podcast. And, at one point I was even trying to record my high school band's first EP that never got anything.
Why not?
I know. We were supposed to record one day, but I got sick. That's the story of why that never happened. But I'm trying to, I'm trying to keep myself from writing record, and basically by the time quote unquote lockdown ended, I had almost written a double record. And so, all those songs, were the times that we were living in.
Yeah,
it was
right.
a pretty ruinous time, we'll say. And so there's been sort of a theme through our records. Like I think I joked one time that like each time the world ends a little more in our records. And so the first Son of Man, right after that, it was written kind of abstractly about the end of the world. And then the week that came out, there was a pretty major leadership shift at my church that kind of shook a lot of things in my personal life. And so then, Pillars was were the songs that came out of that. But then, by the time Pillars came out, the world had stopped due to a global pandemic. And so then it's like everything just keeps. And so then now these are the songs that are kind of built out of, all the social strife and political strife that has come out of that. And so it's kind of the idea of in Pillars is a track, Joy Pain, that talks about when the world falls away, the pillars strong enough to stay will carry you. It's like, well, I mean, we're basically just walking through the ruins of everything else at this point. And so I tried really hard to like go in and add a line about ruins to one of the songs. It just didn't fit, but the theme of it that's where I've felt like we're living.
Yeah. Yeah. You come out of a record like this and you're just like, man, I just want to write happy songs for like, I just want to do a happy record next time and just be like.
Yeah. It's like the Cure going from pornography to whatever the top was.
Right.
to then head on the door.
Yeah. It's good times. Post-gaze. You describe your band as post-gaze. What? Come on. You're just making shit up now. What?
Yep. I am. Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's faster than saying post-rock shoegaze as really the big answer to that. But also we're not quite a post-rock band.
Yeah.
Because, we have a lot of the same sonic elements to it, but at the same time, we're pretty vocal forward. And then also, we have a lot of shoegaze textures and, big old pedal boards that we're all using. But at the same time, like shoegaze, I think is really kind of more laid back from like a rhythm and drive. So at least the way that I think about it, it's basically like pop songs that just get fuzzed out, like the true shoegaze that you look at. So like you take all the guitars off of Loveless and play it on acoustic guitar. It's basically Beach Boys songs. And so I feel like it's
My Bloody Valentine, especially Loveless, I feel like they're the exception to the rule. Is like I got to see them live, and they're they're fucking loud.
So good.
Like,
good. No, but Kevin Shields is writing pop songs, and I would love to write pop songs. And Gaze was actually a pretty earnest attempt at writing like a My Bloody Valentine style. I had actually wrote that right after getting into Loveless for the first time, and it probably shows. The first demo, it shows even more. There's flanger and phaser all over everything. But then I feel like we just have maybe a little bit more, I don't know, not quite as accessible. We're not quite as hooky as things like that. I'm not quite as good of a pop writer to be a proper shoegaze band. And the vocal aren't quite as buried in woodiness, which is something I'm trying to work on. I'm trying to get more buried under bushiness.
Yeah. The first single you released, I guess it's out for everybody, Spillt, with Ryan from Holy Fawn. How'd that collaboration come up?
We had written this song. That was actually the first song that I taught to the band right before the shelter in place order went out. And so we had one band practice in like February 2020, and we worked on that song. And then, as the pandemic is rolling on, the lyrics are taking a clearer shape, and, the song is taking a different form. And I get to the part where I start writing the bridge, and I'm trying to figure out what happens vocally here. And I couldn't get away from, I think this has got to be screamed vocals. And I tried a couple different things, and I have, as much like hardcore and metal as I've listened to in my life, I've never really done screamed vocals too much. And so I tried doing it. I had dozens of takes where I tried to do this, and I even like tried to like code it in a bunch of effects to like hide it. But I'm like, we gotta find somebody else to do this. And so we had a few ideas. Our biggest pie in the sky idea was Dustin Kensrue. I actually have a friend from American Arson, is a band on Face Down Records, who is friends with their like live manager, and so kind of passed that along, and then has heard like he just doesn't do that. I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So like, who's my next like unlikely, just as unlikely, but like, who would I want to do? And Holy Fawn is one of my favorite bands of the last 10 years. And, just everything they've done has just been so spectacular. And to tell the truth, I started writing Spillt after being right front stage center for their set at Postfest. And so I was like, I want to try to do something like this. So then I was like, can I obstruct the fact that I ripped them off very heavily by getting him to do the screaming part?
Yeah.
And we have a few mutuals through social media. And so just reached out, and it ended up being much more attainable than I expected it to be. I expected to be given a number and just say that, nope, sorry, that is way out of our price range. But it ended up being something that we could actually do. And he was incredible. He was a delight to work with, was incredibly complimentary about everything, and was, sent me the tracks, and then was like, gassing me up about the song and my own vocals and things like, bro, what are you doing? Why are you doing all this? And so, it's just this incredible experience to have him involved with it. But then I did actually eventually figure out how to scream from needing to play that song live. And so then there are other screamed vocals on the album that are me.
Nice.
Because we couldn't, shell out his feature fee every time.
Yeah.
What's also funny is that Ryan does the screamed vocals on Paper Tigers on the Artist in the Ambulance Revisited that Bryce just put out. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, so Dustin isn't even doing his own screaming parts. No. He's using your screaming parts now too. So
yeah. Moved away from that. Yeah. Age out of screaming sometimes, and
he still screams on it.
He does. I've seen him live. He can pull it off. This record was mastered by Mario from Spotlight. How'd you end up working with him?
He actually mastered Pillars as well. Okay. And we got hooked up through social media, also around Postfest 2019. Those two sets were actually right next to each other. Spotlights played, then Holy Fawn played, and I just stayed right in the middle. And, was right there for both of them. And Spotlights is another one of those bands in the last few years that has just absolutely captured my attention. And so he has an audio company that he does, like that's like, I believe, his main gig. Mm-hmm. And so I saw him posting something about, hey, like if you need any audio work done, I'm like, you're doing your own audio work for Spotlights, right? Because that shit sounds great.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's talk about this. And so he only mastered the vinyl edition of Pillars, which I wish that we would have contacted him maybe a little earlier to get him on the digital as well. But this time we did get him early on and it just sounds fantastic.
That's right. Yeah. Holy Fawn, Spotlights, two great bands.
Absolutely. I'm absolutely thrilled to obscure how intimately I'm ripping them off by hiring them into the project.
Yeah. Album comes out March 24th. You guys have any plans for this year?
We actually are in a period of reshuffling right now. We just had to get a new drummer, which is unfortunate timing. And I thought like that's like the one thing drummers are supposed to be good at. So, drummer joke. But so we are, just we've got some out of town contacts that there's actually a show out of town that we had to cancel because of the very sudden drummer shakeup. And then, we're involved in the organization for Audio Feed Music Festival in Urbana, Illinois. And so we're going to be there in some capacity. I don't know what day or time. 3 of us in the band. Our new drummer also is, involved in booking the stage. So we're probably going to have to like abstain from that part of the schedule. So just that leaves one guy on the committee that's planning the thing. But we just want to, play shows and get out of town a couple times, probably hit up Chicago or Grand Rapids and Indianapolis. And so we had one of the guys from Trenches hit us up about playing in Indy sometime right after Spillt came out, which is pretty wild.
That's awesome.
Sweet, man.
Oh yeah. That's cool. You're a new dad. So like in those early phases of baby, what were you watching or listening to that's been like keeping your attention?
So the baby has actually gotten me to enter into my first real true Cure phase.
Okay.
There's you're always trying to figure out how to get the baby to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a series called Rockabye Baby that does, lullaby renditions, various pop and rock bands. And, we've tried Radiohead, we've tried Smashing Pumpkins, we've tried Nine Inch Nails, Beastie Boys, and, all these things, which like, yeah, they're fun, but also they're not super sleepy. Like you can only do so much to Cherub Rock before it becomes a different song. And that line is not before the point at which it's just still like a really urgent, exciting rock song. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you're playing it on xylophones. It's still this like urgent, groovy thing. But there's an album of Cure covers that really seems to do the trick. Like, so Boys Don't Cry kicks on and she settles right down.
Nice.
But she's still at the age where we have to be present with her for most of her naps, either holding her or being there in the room for when she wakes up and make sure like, oh, you're still here. And so this is playing on my phone constantly, and as I'm listening to these songs, which a number of them I'm familiar with, I've owned a copy of Disintegration for probably 6 years now. I've owned a copy of Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me for a while. Listen to them sometimes, but never like super frequently. Mm-hmm. But I'm hearing these little lullaby songs. I'm like, these are really, I think I really love these songs. And so the past week, which it's funny because, she and my wife are on vacation right now without me. And then I've just been listening to The Cure the whole time, which from an objective standpoint could look like I'm very depressed, but I'm actually quite happy to be listening to The Cure.
Yeah.
So
that's
also
awesome.
Seinfeld. Baby watched a lot of Seinfeld. So Ruins is, technically, I guess you could say like a pandemic release. A lot of those things are looking at, because it changed us
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. We weren't super nice people through a lot of that, and I am certainly no exception to that. I think there's something about shifting everything into the online space that, because everybody is splintering off into their own echo chambers, and then when they come back together, it just gets really volatile. And so that's probably the biggest thing that's the biggest through line through the record is that idea of, we have these deep disagreements, but for the most part, the source of those disagreements are very, very, very close together. And so the track Sinews, for example, was actually not pandemic inspired, but it was more inspired by a fight at a extended family dinner about, different ideas of theology and biblical authority and things like that, and different interpretations of scripture. And so, but it's, just this idea is like, these mentors in my life, these family members that have, taught me so much about how to be a person, like these are the ideas that I've come to because of what you taught me. Now,
Right.
there's such deep disagreements that we're having about race, about queer affirmation, about economics. These are the ideas. These are the things that you told me were important. I only got there because of the things that you taught me. But now it's become this great disagreement between us, and so that's really the biggest and most uncomfortable through line through the record that is on there. And so it's dipped kind of all over the place through there.
Yeah. I remember after it was like inauguration day for Biden's inauguration. I said one of the like most difficult things about like the Trump years was watching people who I love and respected and were mentors to me just debase their faith for somebody who was so anti-Christ, and just be like, fuck, what are we doing? Like,
yeah, my grandpa said something in the Republican primaries before, is like, man, I don't know what Trump is doing. I don't know who that guy thinks he is or whatever. And then later, like, he and my grandma were pretty outspoken because they were Republicans, because Fox News is, informing them of one side. And it's like, what are you saying?
right.
And my grandpa is a little bit more but just seeing some of the things that are coming out of that sort of school, and so many leaders that I had as a in youth group or as other older adults in my church growing up. I'm just like looking and I'm like, why? So I remember when I was in high school, the big thing was like relative truth. That's like the big thing that everyone's warning. And then all of a sudden, like, because Kellyanne Conway gets on and talks about alternative facts because she's supporting a Republican president, then it's suddenly okay to, that's suddenly all right.
Yeah.
Weird. Okay. Yeah. It's just been a bizarre and very, bizarre is not maybe the word, horrifying. It's been horrifying in a lot of ways. It's sort of like a there's almost an element of body horror to it.
Yeah.
Where you just watch this person that, has nurtured you and who loves you just kind of turn into a monster.
Yeah.
And so that's an experience that I had all too often through even the earliest days of the pandemic before everybody got their blocks and unfollows in.
Yeah.
But it just, is just weird how different narratives take hold and can twist from the same starting point, really. Ideally, we all want the same things. We want our families to be safe, and we want the people that we care for to be cared for. But finding where those lines don't overlap. The part of the Venn diagram that goes out from there is a pretty vast and horrible expanse.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of where I was living when I was recording which is probably most pointed in the song Measure, which is probably it's the maybe the angriest song I've written.
Yeah. Yeah. You find it tough to like just look around at these various people in the way like Republican conservatism has taken over evangelicalism and like remain like faithful and like carry that label of Christian or whatever. You're just like,
I am incredibly fortunate in that I have a healthy number of people around me who are like-minded, who are disappointed in the same things I'm disappointed in. I am on staff at a church with a board with other staff members who were just as terrified as I was to watch all these things happen. And I have people that I went to college with who are pastors in other places, who are in churches in other places or working in other ministries, who are walking through the same kind of betrayals that I am, and feeling the same sorts of abandonment from their own spiritual mentors. And, just finding that there are progressive Christians, there are queer Christians, there are Christians who aren't insane that I can have fellowship with and talk about these things without worrying about, number one, losing my job. That was I lost a youth pastor job. Not a youth pastor. I was an intern at a youth group, and the youth pastor suggested me as his replacement when he was resigning. And they were like, "Oh, well, he supports gay marriage." So I'm like, no. Wait, so that cost me a job then? Weird. Okay. But now to be in a point where, there are openly queer people at my church that are welcome to serve on teams and welcome as part of our church and to have fellowship and are in small groups, and is just, that is not an experience I thought I would have back when I was losing job opportunities because of, and at that point, it wasn't even that I supported gay marriage. It was pretty early on in that journey for me, but it was more that I was like, I don't think this would be the end of the church like people are saying it will be.
Right.
And they apparently did not like that very much. But yeah, just to have other folks around who can affirm to me, yeah, this is insane.
Yeah,
this is insane. And I don't think this is what Jesus meant. I don't think this is what the Bible means by that. And so that's probably the only way that could ever have happened.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.
I never felt so young.